Donald Trump and
Democrats voted.
Donald Trump, 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 and Donald Trump, Donald Trump,
President Biden had a fundraiser debate stage.
Let's go back to
Oil
Donald
profits.
Trump, Donald Trump, Donald Trump, Donald Trump.
So it's been 24 hours after that heated interview between Kamala Harris and Bret Baier from Fox News. The fallout is definitely worth looking at. Clearly, you're always going to have two sides of the story. I say you really have three. Obviously, if you are conservative, a Trump supporter, it was an embarrassment. I mean, she just got destroyed, right? We got to see her get angry and frustrated, and she blew up. If you're on the left, you're saying, yeah, you know, she bashed Trump all day. She did a great job. This is why people should vote for her. And the third side is, if you're an undecided voter, did this do anything for you? Absolutely not. So what I'm going to do is react to quite a few clips that have come out since that interview and talk about it. Let's start with CNN.
She has no answer for why Biden and Harris threw out Donald Trump's executive orders and changed everything, and then a flood of people came in. An ounce of humility here would go a long way, and she doesn't have it in her to do it, and she has no real answer other than to blame Congress. And Bret was right. Democrats controlled everything when they took over, and so is she saying it's the Democrats' fault that the immigration system is broken? I don't understand this. I don't understand why she can't just say, hindsight here, we shouldn't have done it. I think the American people would actually accept it, but she won't do it.
That issue that he's touching on is an ounce of humility. That's one of the reasons why I believe Bret Baier ended her campaign during that interview, because she refused to do that. She refused to be humble. She refused to accept any responsibility or be held to account, if that's the best way to say it. And if you want to see that video, I'll link it in the description below, where I go over the reasons why I believe Bret Baier ended her campaign, but I digress. No, she has no answers. We know this. We do these videos all the time. And during that interview, it was a great opportunity. Bret Baier gave her plenty of times to separate herself from Joe Biden, take responsibility, and lay out a clear vision on why, if you are an undecided voter or a disgruntled Republican, why you should be voting for her. Now, that's just a perspective from a conservative, Scott Jennings. Let's hear the opposite.
Bret Baier was acting a little bit like a Trump surrogate. He is an accomplished journalist with decades of experience, but he knew going into that interview that the Fox viewers wanted to see Harris roasted. He basically had to act as a stand-in for the Trump campaign because that's what his audience wanted. That's the way I see it.
Okay, so clearly he's delusional. It's not that I was really looking for her to be roasted. What I was looking for is someone to legitimately not only ask her the first question, but ask her it again, and then again, like follow up. And that's what CNN Dana Bash failed to do. We saw a little bit of that with 60 Minutes, of course. And by the way, I forgot to mention this. You guys do know that she showed up late at 5:15. Knowing that Bret Baier is going to air this interview at 6 p.m. and they need time to prepare the recording to go live at 6 p.m. And she was supposed to start at 5 p.m. So I don't want to hear, well, you know, he was talking over her and all this other stuff. Well, you guys should have showed up on time. In fact, she should have sat there for at least an hour. Since we're on the topic of people giving delusional takes, let's hear what Sunny Holston had to say about this interview.
I think that there will be people that will change their minds. I think that there will be people that were very shocked at that. I was shocked in real time because you have people that are never Trumpers that watch Fox News. You have independents that watch Fox News. You have Democrats that watch Fox News. So the reason she appeared on Fox News is because she knows that there are openings for her there. But, you know, Bret Baier, he did himself a disservice by doing what he did. He is known for doing the bidding of Fox News, but he ends his show every night as fair, balanced, and unafraid. Well, that was not fair and balanced.
Well, the problem with Sunny Holston's take here is she doesn't understand who the audience is when it comes to Fox News. I'm sure she hasn't looked at the numbers. She probably doesn't even know how they identify conservative, independent, Democrat. What are the percentages there? She doesn't know any of that, right? She's providing an ignorant opinion, in my opinion, no pun intended. But clearly we know that Fox News is made up a majority of conservatives. Like, that's obvious, okay, without even diving into the numbers. But even if we took her word and we said, yeah, there are a lot of independents who watch that show or a lot of undecided voters. If Kamala Harris spent 95% of her time blaming Trump on every single question that was asked, how did she win those over? Please help me understand that.
And I think even most importantly, you know, this notion of humility. You need to be humble. You can't be passionate. What I was really distressed at.
You can't be passionate?
You can't be passionate. It's described as aggressive.
Who
right?
said that?
Well, Dana Perino, right after this panel, offered this very predictable assessment. She said Harris came in hot and men got angrier. It's the angry,
She did not.
It's the angry
That's
black
baloney.
woman trope. The
She
bottom line
never
is
was angry.
she was showing passion
He was
and a
angry.
command of the facts.
Yeah, so that is an example of the world that we're living in where one event happens and there's just two different perspectives, right? Clearly, she was worked up in the very beginning. She was not calm. Even if you want to say that she was passionate, you could tell there were times where she was frustrated.
You know what I'm going to talk about.
Yeah, but
right
do you
now,
just a
which is-
number? Do you think it's 1 million, 3 million?
Brett, let's just get to the point. Okay, the point is that we have a broken immigration system that needs to be repaired.
So your
And-
Homeland Security Secretary said that 85%
Well, no,
of apprehensions.
I'm not finished. We have
It's a
an
rough
immigration
estimate of 6
system
million people
that
have been
needs to be-
released into the country. And let me just finish. I'll get you the question. I promise you.
I was beginning to answer.
And when you came into office, your administration immediately reversed a number of Trump border policies.
Practically within hours of taking the oath was a bill to fix our immigration system.
Yes, ma'am. It was called
And-
the U.S. Citizenship Act of 2021.
Exactly.
It was essentially
so,
a pathway to citizenship for the.
Yes,
ma'am.
May I finish responding,
But
please?
here- but this-
you have to let me finish.
You had the
please.
White House and the House and the Senate,
I'm
and
in
they
the
didn't
middle
bring up
of
that bill.
responding to the point you're raising,
Okay.
and I'd like to finish.
Maybe if she had given Bret Baier more time, like 60 minutes, then maybe he didn't have to rush through it and get to the next question. So that's a bunch of bull, by the way. But of course, those women on The View are going to say that because they look at everything from the identity politics lens and not really from the common sense lens.
That to me, look, the constant jumping in, I couldn't help but feel it's because she's a woman that he's going to keep doing this. So it got a little hard to watch at times. But I think she did a huge service to herself going exactly where people are. Meanwhile, Donald Trump is canceling interviews from 60 Minutes to CNBC,
He's
NBC.
scared. He's been hiding.
And she's
He's
going to
scared.
Fox, where I said this the other day, that you allow yourself to define who you are. If they hear it from your mouth, people aren't just talking about it. So people are going to watch and see how she held her own.
Yeah, so that's, again, this is the times that we live in where if a woman who's in a leadership position is criticized and she's a person of color, that must mean that either one, I'm sexist, or two, we are racist, when really it's like, hey, if I can't hold her accountable, then why is she in that leadership position to begin with? That is just intellectually lazy. I think that's the best way to put it. So obviously they're just making excuses, but let's hear from Geraldo, who does support Harris because, you know, he went off the cliff, of course. He has Trump derangement syndrome. And I thought what he said was probably intellectually honest about her performance.
But I still am baffled by the lack of preparation going into a high profile, the highest profile interview she has, as you described, Dan, the highest profile interview that she has given. For example, the Democrats knew that immigration was going to be all about immigration. They were going to come out, Bret was going to come out smoking on immigration. You know, to me, that's politics 101. I'm not a politician. I'm not an expert in this, but I know a thing or two about debates, and it just seems to me that she missed an opportunity. Her briefers did, and from this moment on, I advise them to not be the doormat when it comes to this issue. It is their biggest Achilles heel. There's no doubt about it. If Donald Trump wins, it will be largely because of the immigration issue.
Yeah, see, that's the issue that I have with her. You know, as a competitor, I want her to bring her best, right? If we look at this from a sports analogy, and it just seems like either one, she hasn't been practicing, two, she ignored the playbook. She doesn't know the playbook. She hasn't memorized the plays, and she just goes in there trying to wing it and blame Trump for everything. And again, if the goal of the interview was to get voters who are on the fence, this is an utter disaster. And let me show you one more clip of someone who clearly will never vote for Trump, but also does not support Harris, but provides another thoughtful articulate analysis of what happened here.
The test for both of these campaigns now is to get voters whose choice isn't between Harris and Trump so much as it's between staying home or voting for the candidate that they like. And so in this way, I think the Trump people thought this was a great interview for them. I agree that it was an ink blot. That's why they put out the entire interview on Twitter. And the Harris people think it was a great interview for them because they're trying to speak to different sets of voters. And because it's an ink block, different sets of voters that they're trying to get will see it differently. Where I disagree with Van on this is I think there's some legitimate criticisms about specific choices that Bret Baier made. But I think Bret Baier is a serious journalist. He gave Donald Trump a pretty serious interview, too. I don't think he's comparable to someone like Rachel Maddow. I don't think he was necessarily intending to be disrespectful. I can understand why people would hear it that way because he was worried about her filibustering. I don't think she did a magnificent job. I think she did a conventionally mediocre job, maybe even a bad job, had some good moments.
I think that's the best word, underwhelming, right? She may have gotten angry. She may have shown passion according to The View, but zero substance. And at the heart of the issue when it comes to Kamala Harris's campaign is this big contradiction that exists. Why has she switched up so much on her policy positions? And one in particular that Bret Baier asked her about was the transgender topic. Check out what Sher Michael Singleton had to say about this, which I thought was spot on.
The vice president, once upon a time, supported taxpayer dollars, your money, my money, your money, all the people who are watching, to go towards people who broke the law coming into our country, to give them driver's license, to pay for tuition when we're struggling to pay for our own children to get a college education. Then her own running mate signed into law in his own state these very things that she's now saying she's now against them. And American people are supposed to believe that the vice president has now all of a sudden had an epiphany. And all of a sudden, all of her beliefs have magically changed, yet the guy she chose clearly believes these things. And you're flipping it to Republicans?
Now, before we go any further, if you're getting value from this video, do us a favor. Like, share, and subscribe to this channel. If you want to support us further, go to the link in the description below, grab yourself a t-shirt, or buy us a cup of coffee. Okay, so there's definitely more reactions than what I showed you in this video. But I think the conclusion is this. Number one, her base is going to be fired up because of this interview. She went to Fox News, credit that she finally did it. I still believe it's too little too late. She should have did this 2 months ago, but hey, that's a whole nother thing. And now they're scrambling at the last minute trying to put her out there. And why is that? That's not for fun, ladies and gentlemen. She's going on Fox News. She's making all of these media appearances. She spent almost the past week with the black community. Why? Because the internal polls shows that she's falling behind. She's not where she needs to be. So that's point number one. Point number two, her campaign, they are just as guilty as Trump's campaign at using dirty tactics. Okay, whatever they accuse Trump of doing, yeah, they're doing it too, by the way. They're trying to do whatever they can to win this election. And part of that is trying to ice Bret Baier and show up late to the interview and then cry foul because he had to rush through the questions. I mean, that is just absolutely a dirty tactic, okay? And it blew up on them, depending on what side, of course, you're on when it comes to this whole conversation. And finally, this interview is just an additional confirmation of what has always been the problem with her campaign. We don't know where she truly stands on anything, whether it is fracking, the Green New scam, right? Taxes, foreign policy. She can barely even explain that, by the way. The economy, immigration or border security, right? I mean, all of these different topics, it is very fuzzy. The only thing that you could say, I believe, is clear when it comes to Kamala Harris is her stance on abortion and that it's a free-for-all. There should be no restrictions whatsoever. I know that is very clear from her end. I know that for a fact, and that is my opinion. So what do you guys think about some of these delusional takes, especially from The View? You know they were going to cry sexism every single time. We know that. They're going to use identity politics to explain why their candidate was not prepared for that Fox News interview. But people who have common sense, even people who are never going to vote for Trump, could see that interview for what it was. And I want to hear what your thoughts are. And since it's been 24 hours, What are you hearing from other people? Share your thoughts and more in the comments section below. If you want to know why Bret Baier ended her campaign and some of the reasons that I came up with, you could watch that video because it's coming up right now.